I am Seth Streeter, co-founder of Mission Wealth. And as many of you know, at Mission Wealth, we look at wealth from a holistic lens. It's about a lot more than just money. And I'm excited for today's program because in many ways, our health is our ultimate wealth. We're fortunate to have our esteemed resource, Dr. Shah. He is a health and wellness specialist, a renowned board-certified surgeon who has performed over 10,000 surgeries from trauma to heart surgery to plastic surgery. He is a published author, technology entrepreneur, and founder and CEO of Next Health, a leading health optimization and longevity center. Dr. Shah started his medical training at an accelerated program at the age of 15 at the University of Missouri, and he earned his medical degree at the age of 21, making him one of the youngest doctors in the United States. After surgical training in California, Dr. Shah continued his training at the Mayo Clinic, one of the most prestigious medical institutes in the country. After earning his board certification, he went on to open surgical centers throughout California, as well as starting innovative technology companies, creating patented medical devices, as well as advising dozens of startups. Dr. Shah's belief in continual education and self-improvement has earned him alumni status at Harvard Business School, Singularity University, and many other prestigious institutions. So imagine if the following statement is true: your life expectancy is under your control, and it is possible to reduce your biological age by following these practices we'll be learning about. Dr. Shah believes this is the future of health and wellness, and today we get to learn insights we can apply to our own lives. A couple technical instructions before we get started. We will be recording this event, and we will email you a top takeaways blog post with the video links so you can watch it later and share it with your friends. Dr. Shah will be presenting for 45 minutes, and we will leave 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. We want your questions, so do please post those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. The more questions we ask, the more insight we will gain. If you have any technical questions or you want to respond to a question, you can use the chat box for that. And at the very end, you will be receiving a survey, and we really appreciate your feedback and are excited to get ideas for future speakers. So Dr. Shah, thank you so much for joining us today. We really look forward to learning from you how we can improve our health and our longevity.
Thank you so much for having me, Seth. This is such a pleasure to speak to your audience and be here with you today. I am really excited to share my screen with you right now and just launch right into it. So let's do that. And like Seth said, we definitely want to take questions. So please put them in the chat box. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. So Seth told you a little bit about me, and he was very kind. I really appreciate his nice feedback and comments on me. However, I want to tell you a little bit of a deeper personal story about myself. So yes, I did start surgery centers, and yes, I did thousands of surgeries in my life. But as we all know, as we go through our life and we're trying to make something valuable, we end up not taking care of ourselves. We end up becoming the last priority on our priority list. And this was me a few years ago in 2016. I weighed about 50 pounds more than I weigh right now. But not only that, that wasn't really the biggest problem. The biggest problem is I was dying. I had high blood pressure. I was on 3 blood pressure medications. I was pre-diabetic and on diabetes medications. I could barely move. I had joint pains. I remember I could not wake up to go to work and go into surgery. So I was always late to the operating room sometimes. And I couldn't sleep. And that was a huge problem. I would sleep maybe 3 or 4 hours every night. And that was not restful sleep. And I had a condition called sleep apnea. I had a concierge physician. I was paying a lot of money to this concierge physician to see me once a year and take my phone calls. And he just kept adding more and more medications to my already filled medicine cabinet. He put me on my 3rd blood pressure medication, an antidepressant, and anti-anxiety medications. And I just felt myself getting worse and worse and not better at all. And it was about this time I saw my son turn 2 years old, and my daughter was, my wife was pregnant with my daughter. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you know, the way you're headed, Darshan, you're not going to survive to see these kids graduate from high school, get married, and all reach those milestones of life. And I thought to myself, I have to make a change here. So being a physician, you'd think I know what to do, right? And obviously I had no idea what to do. We get really a day or two about staying healthy in medical school. And we get, years and years of education on diagnosing disease and what's the best pill for that disease, almost as though we are paid salespeople for the pharmaceutical companies. And at that point in my life, I just said, you know what? I have a few dollars in my bank account. I'm just going to take a year off and I'm going to learn everything that people in the health and wellness field learn and apply my medical background to that and really see if I can get myself into a better place. I went to every nutrition conference, every functional medicine conference, and I even became a personal trainer, and it was miraculous. And within 6 to 8 months, I had completely changed my health around, and I was able to lose the weight, get off all my medications, and I just felt more energetic. I had energy for days. I was sleeping all night. My life had completely changed in 6 months. And I thought to myself that, wow, there is something here. I started talking to my patients about this, my surgical patients that were needing to lose weight before they could undergo surgery. And we were able to have reproducible results as long as someone was motivated and was willing to sit down and listen to what works and put these habits into their day-to-day life. And so, with that, I started a new company called Next Health, and that is like my passion right now, is really helping people get healthy, stay alive longer, and also enjoy the years in their life. And I want to tell you some of my top takeaways on how to make that happen for yourself. It's really not rocket science. You might think some of this stuff is common knowledge, but you'll be surprised how many things that we think is common knowledge, but we're very confused about. So just a quick disclaimer, everything I tell you today, definitely talk to your personal physician about it. All of our biology is different. We need to personalize advice to our own biology, and hopefully your physician can help you do that. If not, I'm going to talk to you about how to get yourself a new physician to help you with these changes. So quick question to everybody. Do you want to live to be 120 years old? And if you look at this person who's 120 years old, this is one of the oldest living people in the world. She won the Guinness record for that. This is how we normally imagine 120, right? Very wrinkled, barely able to open her eyes. We don't even really know if she's really in there or not mentally. And she probably doesn't look like she moves around too much. If this was everyone's kind of vision of 120, obviously we'd all say, no way, I do not want to be that person. But what about Jim Arrington? Jim Arrington's about 92 years old, and he looks amazing. He is totally mentally with it. Talked to him a few times at the gym, by the way, can lift more weight than most of the people at the gym, and he's doing fantastic. What is he doing to achieve this kind of health and vitality in life at his age that this person probably did not do? Well, I have a few ideas for you. So let's talk a little bit about living to 120. We know that over the past 100 years, humanity has been able to extend our lifespan, right? We used to live to maybe 50, 55, and now we're living well into our 80s. However, what we've become really bad at is increasing our health span. We're adding years to our life, but we're not adding health to those years. And you can see here, back in the past, we were not living as long, but we only spent maybe a year in an unhealthy situation. Now we're living longer, but we're spending years and years in nursing homes and mental care facilities, et cetera, or fighting cancer when we really just all we did was add those years to our life, but now we're spending them in a very unhealthy situation. And so the goal is really to extend our lifespan, but get back to this point where we only spend a little bit of time not feeling healthy and vital. So my 3 goals for all of my patients is, number 1, first and foremost, prevent an early death. Prevent you from all of a sudden hitting a brick wall with a heart attack, a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer, or any of these things that can kill you quickly. Secondly, I want to show you how you can prevent disease from its very origins, its roots. And that's when you do that, you prevent all of the chronic diseases out there. And then lastly, once we have those 2 things right, we're going to talk about how you can optimize your health and actually turn back your aging clock with the newest technologies. So let's talk about goal number 1, preventing an early death. So these are all of the leading causes of death by the CDC. And some of these, they just sneak up on you, right? Heart attacks, cancer, having an infection that kills you, a stroke. These are the things that we need to be able to diagnose early so that 20, 30 years before you're headed in that direction. And then secondly, what we want to do is eliminate the possibility of all these other things on the list: diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, etc. And the way we do that is by eliminating disease at its source. The most disease sources are these root causes: inflammation and immune system disturbances, hormone deficiencies, dysregulation of your hormones, a gut issue, so gut dysbiosis, believe it or not, insulin resistance. So we've all heard of diabetes. This is actually starts off with a condition called insulin resistance, being exposed to toxins and chronic pathogens, and finally, mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, these 6 things, even though they sound very sciencey, I'm going to explain them to you and the mechanisms behind them and show you how to stop these things in their tracks. If you can stop these 6 items, the chances of you getting Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, any of the things that we know that our parents might have suffered with, or that we even know people suffering with right now, you'll never have those problems. And that's the key. You know, in Western medicine, we spend a lot of time playing whack-a-mole, where we diagnose a disease when it happens and we start treating it with pills and medications and surgery, when you never should have been in that spot in the first place. And that's functional medicine. It's a new branch of medicine where we stop disease at its origins. And then lastly, once you get those things right, like I said, we want to optimize your health and use the latest technologies in longevity to turn back your aging clock. So for all of you science and tech geeks out there, you all know Gordon Moore. He's founded Intel, and he came up with a law called Moore's Law. And we see this, right? We see that computing power has increased so quickly over our lifetimes that now we have the power of a computer that used to fill a room in the power of our hands. And this is happening in an exponential curve, right? So our cell phones now, they have a ton of power. They can do so many things, but imagine how quickly we're going to get to the point where artificial intelligence is in our cell phones. Moore's Law predicts that in about 20 to 30 years, our cell phones will have the power of all of human minds on the planet at this moment. And then in another 20 years, we'll have the power of all human minds that ever existed in the power of our hands. And you can actually see this phenomenon being applied to biology, where biotechnology, when technology and biology merge, is also following Moore's Law. And we're seeing this exponential curve in the rate of biological discoveries. And so what we're finding out over the last few years is that we now know the 7 different reasons that cells age. And this is monumental, right? Because now that we know these 7 reasons that cells age, we can actually start figuring out how to stop these 7 things. And once we figure out how to stop or even turn back these 7 things, then we can actually start aging in reverse. And we're seeing billionaires spend billions of dollars in this new field of medicine called longevity research. And we're finding discoveries faster and faster every single year. And it's so exciting for me to see these things happen. I think what really accelerated it was COVID, actually, believe it or not, when we saw the need that we need to figure out how to get a vaccine out for this virus quickly, because the world had shut down. And so we came up with a new thing called mRNA tumor vaccines. Now, this was not new. It was there for a long time. However, the need for the technology to be out there quickly showed us that we can put things into effect quickly. And so we were able to stop this virus with an mRNA vaccine. The same vaccine can be applied to tumors. We also saw an acceleration in other technologies, such as using pig organs that don't cause immune reactions in our bodies to replace organs in our own body. So imagine if you have a heart attack and it breaks down, just replace it with a gal-safe pig heart. It's incredible to see this stuff happening. We're also seeing the ability to control stem cells and have them differentiate into things like pancreatic cells to fight diabetes, et cetera. All of this stuff, when you dive into the science, it was like science fiction 10 years ago when I went to medical school 25 years ago. But now it's all becoming a reality, and it's coming so fast, and it's super exciting. And I want to tell you how you can take advantage of some of these things today. So let me ask you a question. How would you rate your health? If 1 was poor, like you know you're not in a good spot, or 5 being excellent, like you are healthier than most of the people in your age group? Think about that question for a minute. Okay, so I could tell you that most of you are probably wrong in your assessment of your health. And the reason I say this is because when you take a look under the hood of what's actually happening in your biology, utilizing biomarkers or blood tests and genetic tests, What I find almost universally is some of the unhealthiest people are the people that you would never expect are unhealthy. People that run marathons, do triathlons. I take care of a lot of athletes. They literally have some of the worst biomarkers. Their inflammation is through the roof. They're pre-diabetic. They are not in a good state, and we have to turn their health around. However, the people that moderate and do things and follow a nice health routine that is moderate over time, they're usually the healthiest people. So I want to give you the power now, just like many of you run your own businesses, right? And you use KPIs or key performance indicators that you check maybe even on a weekly or daily basis to see how your business is doing. All of us have KPIs for our own body, and these are called biomarkers. And I want to give you some of these KPIs that you should follow. Here's a list of them. And don't worry, you're going to get these slides so you have all of these, and you can talk to your doctor about these as well. But if you follow the KPIs of your own biology, you will prevent yourself from getting into a disease state or being hit with a diagnosis of cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, et cetera. And I'm going to give you and talk to you about some of these biomarkers or KPIs of your own health so you know what's going on under the hood of your own health. And it's so important, you guys, that you take control of your health. Don't outsource your health to your primary care physician. I see too many people going to the doctor once a year. Their doctor checks a minimal blood test, if they even do that, and just puts their stethoscope on you and tell you you're fine, come back in a year to see me. And that's where you're going to be headed towards disease, and you don't even know until you're there. You want to become the master of your own health. You want to follow your own KPI and empower yourself with the knowledge, and it's easy to do. So there's a mind-blowing amount of information out there in the health and wellness world. And what I try to do, very much like what Seth does with Mission, is I try to categorize health into 12 aspects of health, just like Seth does. There's 11 holistic aspects of being healthy in wealth and also your body, et cetera. Well, if we dive in and focus it on just health, there are 12 aspects of health that everyone needs to know about, starting with, the pillars: nutrition, energy and movement, exercise, sleep, stress management. But then I want to talk to you a little bit more about how you dive in a little bit deeper. You need to have some of the knowledge so that you can dive in a little bit deeper and not outsource this to your doctor in hormone health, heart health, gut health, immune health, brain health, and how to detoxify your life. And once you get those aspects set, then you can start talking about longevity, anti-aging, and looking younger as well. So in all of the world of health information, I've read thousands and thousands of articles. And what I found is most of the health information out there that you read about in blogs or you get newsletters about or even on podcasts, 50 to 80% of it is wrong, unfortunately. And only 20% of it is really based in real science. And I want to give you what I found really moved the needle for me, that 20% of information that gives you 80% of the result in turning your health around like I did in 6 months. The Pareto principle, if you know what that means, there's always 20% of information that gives you 80% of the result. So let's dive into this. And we're going to use my health, or I call this a wellness wheel. We're going to go around the wellness wheel, and I'm going to tell you what I found over the last 5 years that really moves the needle. So let's talk first about what you put in your mouth, your nutrition. We all know that your food is like medicine. It can either heal you or it can actually even poison you and kill you. And so we really need to know and have set in our mind once and for all, what do I eat that is good for me, right? And the science now knows exactly what that is for most of the population. And here's where the science has landed. Basically, every physician that writes books out there, all the research is really honed in on getting to an agreement on this, that if for most people you eat a plant-based diet of good plants, non-starchy plants, and I'm not saying go vegan, and I'm not saying become even a vegetarian, you will turn your health around completely. Going plant-based has been shown in many, almost thousands of studies now to literally reverse Alzheimer's, reverse heart disease, and reverse diabetes. So eat a plate with mostly plants, 80% plants on your plate, and then the other part of your plate should be good, well-sourced protein. Protein is extremely important in your diet, whether you get it from plants or you get it from meat. As long as you're sourcing it well, you will have basically a magic diet that turns your health around. Notice I did not say carbs, right? Carbs are not necessary for your body unless you need energy at a particular moment. And so if you can supplement carbs with another energy source and take it in larger doses at smaller periods of time, you will become healthier quickly. The SAD diet, or the standard American diet, is exactly the opposite of what I'm talking to you about, right? It's mostly carbs. There's a lot of bad fats in it. You can focus in on good fats like olive oil, avocados, etc. However, you don't need a large amount of that either. Really, there's essential fatty acids that come from good fats. Protein gives you amino acids, which are also essential, and plants give you phytonutrients, which are also essential. Carbs don't give you any of those essential items in your diet. It's just good for a quick burst of energy. So if you follow those rules in general, mostly protein, mostly plants, and some good fats, you'll turn your health around. The other thing is when you eat is equally important as what you eat. Intermittent fasting has been shown for most people that it is a huge benefit to your longevity, also for turning around diabetes and also reducing the chance of you getting insulin resistance. Intermittent fasting, if you don't know what this is where you eat within a specified time window. And if you get down to what's called a 16-8 fast, where you spend 16 hours not eating and 8 hours eating, there's tremendous health benefits. The other part about your diet is knowing what not to eat. And so a few things in this category, the things that you want to totally eliminate from your diet is basically all the food that is manufactured, all the food that has like a label on it that says it comes from a particular company, all processed food, everything that's in the center of your supermarket, things that are on shelves with an ingredient list. Eliminate these as much as you can. There's so many hidden toxins in this, and this is really what's killing the Western world right now is processed food. The second thing that's killing the Western world, which is an all processed food, is sugar. Our body really doesn't need sugar in our diet at all. However, we take in 130 pounds of sugar a year in our diets, and it's killing us as well. Sugar not only causes diabetes, but it also directly poisons your cells by damaging cellular pathways. It causes the mitochondria, or the powerhouses in your cells, to also not function as well. And it actually destroys your gut bacteria that live symbiotically with us. And it causes your immune system to fail, which then leads to more cancer. So if you can get sugar out of your diet, and if you can get processed food out of your diet, and you can eat mostly organic vegetables and grass-fed meats and ocean-raised salmon or fish, you're going to do really, really well. The quality of your food is so important. So I want to give you your first biomarker here for all of you guys to monitor on yourselves, and that's called the hemoglobin A1C, HbA1c. If you haven't heard of it before, this is a measure of your last 3 to 4 months of sugar intake, and also it measures how many carbs you're taking in, because carbs are eventually converted to sugar. And here is a scattergram. I usually do this for an audience that's live, and we've measured their blood test before they come to the talk. But this is a scattergram of the last audience that I did. And you can see the optimal level for hemoglobin A1C is something under 5.2. Once it starts getting towards diabetes and insulin resistance, it starts creeping up above 5.5 to 6. And then once you're above 6, you're pre-diabetic. And once you're about 8, you're diabetic. This is a 20 to 30 year process to get to this point, right? So usually people that don't really watch their diet, taking a lot of sugar, they start getting insulin resistance starting in their 30s, but then it takes more time than that, like 40, 50 years old, before they actually end up in diabetes. So this measurement, most doctors don't even measure it, but it's an extremely important measurement to do even in your 20s or your 30s. So you can see where you are. And if you're getting close to 6, you want to immediately make changes in your diet. An advanced way to do this is use what's called a continuous glucose monitor. Now, these are very available. You can go to levels.com, and they have what I think is probably the best kind of system set up, where you put this patch on your arm and you can see on your phone what your glucose reaction is for particular foods. And if your glucose reacts very strongly to a particular food, you can eliminate that food from your diet. Let's move on to movement and energy, basically exercise. There's a very important point here with exercise. Exercise is also very dose dependent. And what I mean by that is people who exercise too much, actually, it's a problem. They become unhealthy. They cause more inflammation, cause more joint damage, actually cause muscle wasting over time. So people who spend hours and hours on a treadmill every day following the calorie hypothesis, like if I spend 2 hours on a treadmill, I can burn calories and I can eat ice cream later, that is definitely the wrong thinking. You definitely want to make sure that you're not over exercising. Like I said, many of the people that I see that are the unhealthiest, that have the most inflammation, are sometimes athletes and my triathlon runners that do 4 or 5 triathlons a year. The right dose of exercise, or the minimum effective dose, is 45 to 90 minutes a week of exercise. And if you can make most of that in your cardio workout, cardio is good for really one thing. It is really just for your heart. It's keeping your heart healthy. 45 to 90 minutes a week of exercise will do that. And also you can replace that if you don't have enough time to exercise with something called HIIT, high intensity intermittent training, which is also very good for your heart health. The other thing that everyone needs to do is not just do cardio. You must do strength training, especially if you're over 40. We're genetically programmed to start causing what's called muscle wasting or sarcopenia after the age of 40. Our muscles actually start breaking down on their own. The only way to counteract that is by doing strength training. This should be a 3 to 4 times a week practice for at least 20 to 30 minutes using large body motions like lunges, squats, and deadlifts. If you don't know how to do these, please visit a trainer and have them show you. And if you do this 3 or 4 times a week, you will actually, and the studies show very clearly, prevent all chronic disease, prevent cancer, prevent an early death, and of course, prevent muscle wasting and osteopenia or bone loss as well. Extremely important. And then finally, one new thing that's kind of coming out over the last few years, and you've probably heard of this as well, is really making sure you're recovered enough when you do exercise, because you can actually cause a lot of inflammation exercising when you're not adequately recovered. What's a good way to know if you're recovered? Well, listen to your body. If you're feeling tired, worn down, your muscles are aching, probably a good day to skip a workout or do maybe yoga that day or some sort of stretching that day instead of actually doing a full-on workout. Another more data-driven way of doing this is by tracking what's called your HRV, or your heart rate variability, which is a time in between heartbeats. You can do this using an Apple device with an app, or I like using the Oura Ring, which is a ring that you wear that gives you your continuous HRV level. Okay, let's move on to the next pillar of health, which is sleep. The most important, there's 3 things about sleep you need to know. The most important thing is if you have sleep apnea, you must get it diagnosed and treated immediately. This is literally killing you every night as you sleep. Sleep apnea is where your throat closes in on itself at nighttime when you're sleeping due to weakness of the muscles there. And you literally don't take oxygen in for maybe 20 to 30 minutes every night in small dosages. And imagine like your brain not getting oxygen for 30 minutes a night, what that does. People with sleep apnea head quickly towards metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's, all the chronic diseases, and heart attacks. How do you know if you have sleep apnea? Well, if you snore a lot, if your partner tells you you wake up gasping for air in the middle of the night, or you sound like you're choking, and if you can only sleep kind of sitting up, you probably have sleep apnea. Talk to your doctor about this, get this diagnosed, and definitely get it treated. Once you figure out your sleep apnea, if you have it or not, the next thing to do is really optimize your sleep routine, your sleep environment, and start tracking your sleep as well. So there's a lot of devices out there now that give you a sleep score every night to tell you not only how much sleep you get, 7 to 8 hours is definitely 7 to 8 hours is definitely what I recommend, but you also want to know how much of that time you're spending in deep sleep and what your sleep patterns are. So getting one of these sleep trackers helps you to learn these patterns, helps you to understand what your sleep score is and why. To optimize your sleep, I think we all know this. You want to sleep in an optimal sleep environment, which is a cold, dark, quiet, cave-like environment, like our caveman ancestors slept in. Make sure your room is cool, less than 68 degrees, eliminate all the noise, or use a white noise machine, and also make sure all light is eliminated from the room, including your alarm clock light. And I always tell people your sleep routine actually starts as soon as you wake up. This is when your circadian rhythm gets set. What you want to do, and many of us don't do this, is as soon as you wake up, as soon as you see the sun rising, go outside, physically outside, like step foot outside and look out at the sky and use this as your wake up routine. This is when you will set your circadian rhythm, and then also set an alarm clock at nighttime to start your sleep routine about an hour before you get into bed. You want to start weaning down electronic devices, weaning down stress, maybe do a meditation, etc. All right, so now we talked about the pillars. I've given you a few quick tips that really move the needle. Let's dive into more medical science. Cardiovascular health. This is your heart health. One of the things that we all know, we've all heard, and we all have really sad stories about in our lives is we know someone that's died of a heart attack, someone who we never would have thought of died of a heart attack. Well, the problem is we have the science currently to diagnose heart attacks 20 to 30 years before they occur. We just don't use it, unfortunately, because for whatever reason, insurance doesn't cover it. And it's called the coronary calcium CT scan. This is a CAT scan that's done very quickly. It's about a 5-minute test to 10-minute test that's done in a CAT scanner, minimal radiation, and we can actually see calcification of your blood vessels. So if you've never had any heart disease before, never had a stent put in your heart, this test is really very good at diagnosing heart disease 20 to 30 years before you have a heart attack. We do this test on all of our patients, and I can't tell you the number of lives we've saved by finding these vessel blockages in even 40-year-old men and women. The next thing you want to do is understand what your cholesterol level is, and don't be afraid of treating your cholesterol level if you're at risk for heart attack. So there's a lot of controversy around taking cholesterol-lowering medications. I've read all the research. I've talked to all the cardiologists. Definitely, if you need to have your cholesterol controlled, cholesterol-lowering medication is a great way to do it, and you can manage the side effects for sure. I'm definitely not trying to sell you on drugs or anything here. I'm just telling you what I recommend to my patients after looking at the science in a deep fashion. I'm not saying take cholesterol-lowering medications forever, but they are valuable in a temporary fashion until you get your lifestyle under control. The only real way to lower your cholesterol and to prevent heart attacks is to have a holistic view of your health and get better sleep, eat better, exercise, do all the things I'm talking to you about. That's the only way to lower your cholesterol. Really, just like eating a low-fat diet doesn't do it. High cholesterol does not come from eating a high-fat diet. It comes from having a poor lifestyle. Here's the next biomarker I would love for you guys to track. There's lots of different cholesterol measurements, and we can go into them deeply, but I want to give you something easy. Everyone in this audience needs to know what their LDL level is. The LDL is your low-density lipoprotein. It's one of the cholesterol markers that are checked. Don't get super confused by all the different cholesterol markers. Just know that once your LDL level reaches over 130, there's a 20% increased chance of dying of a heart attack. And once it gets to over 160, there's about a 30 to 40% increased chance of dying of a heart attack. Cholesterol does not cause heart attacks. It's cholesterol plus having a poor lifestyle, having a lot of inflammation. So you definitely want to make sure if your cholesterol level is high, that you are modifying your lifestyle and you're lowering your cholesterol temporarily until you get your lifestyle under control. Here's that same scattergram of that audience that had never had, no one in the audience knew what their cholesterol level was. And after we saw this scattergram and many people being over 120 and other people being in super dangerous range, everyone went to talk to their doctors about this, and hopefully we saved a few lives by bringing some attention to this. Let's talk quickly about your brain health, the often ignored organ in our body. We think it's just going to always keep working forever. But as we all know, Alzheimer's and dementia is a real thing, and it affects thousands and thousands of people more and more every year. And the reason for that is that brain health has always been kind of like not really in our mind until just recently in recent history. And there are a few things that you can do to really optimize your brain health. And that's really utilizing your brain more in a good way, and also giving your brain breaks. So when you're talking about giving your brain breaks, Seth and I were just talking a little while ago about how he goes for a walk every day and just disconnects after work. That is fantastic for your brain health. Seth is actually decreasing his chance of Alzheimer's by almost 90% by doing that. Another way to do it is by meditating. If you don't have a meditation practice, I highly encourage you to give it a shot. There's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of trainers you can go to. Doing a daily meditation practice has been scientifically proven to decrease your rate of Alzheimer's and also delay dementia for years, if not forever. Another thing that really does work as well is positivity, practicing positivity on a daily basis. Positivity practices include things like showing gratitude, having social activity, having positive interactions with people, being out in nature, having a spiritual practice. All those things are grouped under positivity. Definitely huge benefits. I don't know how many out there are retired or planning on retiring. Retirement in the traditional sense of the word is actually really bad for your brain. The thing that you want to do if you do retire or if you've exited your company is you want to make sure that you're always using your brain for something. And that doesn't mean doing crossword puzzles. That doesn't mean, playing Sudoku. Those things have minimal impact. What has a huge impact is what's called mental reprocessing. Learning something new like you are today, hopefully, and teaching it to somebody else, having takeaways and teaching it. Always keep your brain active by doing these things. Okay, let's talk a little bit about gut health. Something also very new in the scientific literature. Your gut is actually the biggest barrier between the outside environment and the inside of your body. And one of the things that your gut is really good at is separating toxins and keeping them outside of you and making sure that only the nutrients come inside your body. However, unfortunately, now that we are in the most toxic environment that we've ever lived in human history, and all of our foods have tons of toxins in them, our gut cells are overwhelmed. However, don't worry, we do have gut bacteria that now live in our gut, and they're synergistic with us, and they also help with this. But unfortunately, also, we're not giving our gut bacteria what they need to survive and to thrive. How do you protect your gut, and how do you protect your gut bacteria? It's actually really very simple. Prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are foods that feed your gut bacteria, and probiotics are also help your bacteria to thrive once they are taken hold in your gut. Probiotic foods are things like yogurt, kimchi, fermented foods. I don't know how many of you people eat these foods a lot, but if you don't, definitely try to eat more of them. Probiotic yogurts actually taste really good. If you don't have enough of these probiotic foods in your diet, definitely find a good probiotic pill. I use seed as a probiotic when I don't get enough of these foods in my diet. And then fiber. Fiber is extremely important. And I think a research study done a few years ago showed that 97% of the people in America don't get enough fiber. You want 20 to 40 grams of fiber a day in your diet. And then finally, avoid inflammatory foods. Gluten and even dairy for most of the population is very inflammatory. You can actually get food sensitivity testing that we do to show you exactly what foods are inflammatory to your gut. I recommend everyone do this type of testing. But if you don't avoid gluten, most people, it causes a lot of inflammation. Dairy does as well. And avoid antibiotics unless you absolutely need them, and avoid non-steroidals like ibuprofen. Those are like nuclear bombs to your gut bacteria. Inflammation. Let's talk about this real quick. And a biomarker I'm going to give you for this. The biomarker that measures inflammation in your body is HSCRP, highly sensitive C-reactive protein. Again, here's a scattergram of that audience. You can see some people have very dangerous levels. You want this level as close to zero as possible. Once this level gets over 2, we get concerned. There's a source of inflammation going on in your body. It's almost always your gut. 90% of the time, it's your gut is just not filtering out inflammatory toxins as well as it should be. But there's other things that can do it too. Smoking can do it, stress can do it, even poor dental hygiene has been associated with high levels of inflammation. And you might have heard of studies showing that poor dental hygiene actually leads to more Alzheimer's and heart attacks as well. So HSCRP is another level all of you guys should know for yourselves. Hormone health. Hormones are extremely important. Unfortunately, after the age of 40, we start decreasing our sex hormones because nature's basically done with us in a reproductive capacity. However, testosterone for both men and women is an extremely important hormone because it protects you from all causes of early death. And if you cannot get your testosterone level up naturally through things like strength training and also through improved sleep and eating a good diet that's high in protein, then you should consider testosterone replacement therapy. Both men and women should look into this after the age of 40. We do a lot of this. I personally am on it myself, and there's huge longevity benefits. Definitely there's risks and benefits to everything, so talk to your doctor first, but I'm a big proponent. Vitamin D is another hormone. 90% of Western civilization is very deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin D is an extremely important hormone to prevent osteoporosis, heart disease, stroke, all chronic diseases, and also important for your gut bacteria. Your vitamin D level should be 50 to 80. Very difficult to get this through your diet in our modern diet. And also, we're just not out in the sun enough. And being out in the sun a lot nowadays is not a good idea either. So we pretty much universally recommend vitamin D supplementation with vitamin D K2. That's the one you want to take and get the level between 50 and 80. Everyone here should know what their vitamin D level is. Quick side note on supplements. You have to make sure it's an unregulated industry. You have to make sure you're getting good quality supplements. These are the labels you want to look for in your supplements. Here are some supplements I recommend. I'm not a supplement pusher at all, but I do think everyone needs a few supplements like vitamin D I mentioned, essential fatty acids like krill oil supplement, omega-3s. Using brands like Metagenics, Pure Encapsulation, or Thorne. These are these are brands that are sold in doctors' offices. I use these a lot because I trust what they do, and they individually test their supplements by an outside third-party company to make sure that they are that they are legitimately including these ingredients. Let's talk about stress real quick. I know we all think of stress as bad. I'm here to tell you stress is actually a good thing. Stress is good for our biology on a cellular level because it gives us a minute to reconnect our cells with stressful situations. Actually revs them up, the mitochondria, to make more energy for our cellular functions. But the problem with stress is when it's prolonged. So unrelenting stress that we have in our daily environment right now is the real problem with stress. And so if you recognize that stress is actually gives us good biological responses, and you recognize that prolonged stress is not good, what's the solution to stress? It's interrupting stress. So a few techniques that I use is what's called the Pomodoro technique. That's where I actually have like an egg timer. You can even use this Pomodoro apps on the phone, where every 25 minutes, you just take a 5-minute break. Just get up, walk around in your workday. It really makes a giant difference in the effects of stress biologically on your body. And then take your weekends off. Do a walk at the end of the day like Seth does. Take your vacations and actually go somewhere and disconnect. It's extremely important to mitigate the effects of stress on our health. Let's talk about immunity, and I want to focus in on cancer. Cancer's worst enemy is being diagnosed as stage 1. And we finally have the technology to diagnose the most dangerous cancers at stage 1 or stage 2. If you diagnose them that early, they're very treatable. There's 2 things that I use now that's super high tech. One is called the Gallery Grail test. This new test was just discovered over the last few years, where you can actually find segments of cancer DNA. This is not genetic risk for cancer. This is actually cancer developing in your body. You can find small indicators of that in your bloodstream with a simple blood test. Right now, it's pretty expensive. It's about $1,000 a year. However, the price is coming down exponentially, like all genetic testing is. Highly recommend, if you haven't heard of this, look into it. I can help you get this as well. And I do this on a yearly basis for all my patients. And then also a full body MRI. Every 5 years, you can diagnose not just anatomical abnormalities that could kill you, but also small solid cancers. Finally, the last thing I want to talk to you about is detoxifying your life. This is something that people don't really think about, or maybe think about peripherally. It is actually the #1 reason that we are in the health situation that we are today. Our body is being bombarded with toxins on a daily basis. And it might sound overwhelming to detoxify your life completely. However, if you follow the Pareto principle, where you do a few simple things, you can detoxify 80% of your life. And so the structure I like to give people is detoxify your air, water, food, and skin. How do you detoxify your air? Where do you spend the most time? At work and at home when you're sleeping at night? Get an air purifier for those 2 rooms, where you work and where you sleep. Secondly, your water. Drink only reverse osmosis water or filtered water, and make sure you're drinking it out of a non-plastic container. Finally, detoxify your food. I talked to you early in the nutrition segment about only buying organic, making sure you know your butcher, know where your meat came from, make sure it is grass-fed, and none of it is processed at all. And finally, your skin. It's actually, with a little bit of Googling, you can find natural skin products that have low toxicity to them. EWG.org is a great website to see what is the most non-toxic food and cosmetic products. And finally, of course, don't smoke and minimize your alcohol intake. All right. I said a lot there. I hope you got a few tidbits or maybe even just one that you can put into place that would help you in your life. There are some longevity tips that I can give you, but I'm kind of running out of time here. So I will send you these slides and you can flip through them yourself. I do want to say one quick thing. There is a measurement of your biological age that you can do now. It's called a methylation test. When I first started my health journey, my biological age was actually 60 years old, and I was in my early 40s, late 30s. Over the last 5 years, I've been able to improve my biological age. So now I have a biologic cellular age in my late 20s, which is, for me, a huge win. And I know every single person on this call can do the same thing. So get a biological age test done. They're all over the internet. The True Age is the one that I use. Now, get my slide deck, put some of this stuff into motion. Let's communicate, and then let's measure it again in a year, and let's see where you're at. I can virtually guarantee you, not just will you be living a better lifestyle, but your cells will thank you for it by reversing your biological age. Okay, thank you. Right on time, 9:45. I'll turn it over to Seth.
Dr. Shah, that was incredible. We have so many insights. You really powered through. We also have a lot of questions, so I want to jump right into them. First one is, how do you combat inflation? I know you talked about diet, but what else can we do to combat inflation in our inflation? I'm a financial advisor. Inflammation in our lives.
I was going to say, just raise interest rates. That's all you need to do, right?
That's funny.
Okay, so inflammation, like I said in that gut slide, most of it is coming from your gut. So really need to know, like, what is the status of your gut? When your gut is not feeling good, that's usually like a really bad spot, right? Like when you're starting to get bloating and you're starting to have diarrhea and reflux, then you're in a bad spot. But most people, they even have gut dysbiosis and dysfunction before that. And what you want to do, there's testing you can do. There's gut testing, microbiome testing you can do. But really just start looking at your diet, get rid of all of the non-organic stuff in there, all the processed stuff, get rid of the sugar, and start putting prebiotics and probiotics in your diet. And you will see, like, very quickly, your inflammatory levels will be reduced. The other thing I mentioned is dental health, for sure. Not getting enough sleep, too much stress as well, and being sedentary, huge causes of inflammation.
Great, thank you. Should we be worried about microplastics, and how can we avoid this if it is a problem?
Yeah, I was talking, and then when I talked about detoxifying your water, the most toxic thing in the water is the bottle that's holding it, actually. So, it's a really tough thing, but basically avoiding your exposure to plastics is going to make a massive difference for you. And just not drinking bottled water out of plastic, not buying food that's wrapped in plastic, all these things is just, just monumentally important right now.
Got it. How many years are we from a big breakthrough intervention, and what avenue is likely to come from? So what's kind of in the future, and what are the big breakthrough interventions coming down the pike?
Yeah. Okay. So I think what's going to come first, there's about all those 7 pathways of cellular aging. There's a breakthrough coming in every one of those 7 pathways, which is super exciting. It's all going to happen. It's all going to start during our lifetimes, but it's going to continue potentially after our lifetimes. The one I'm really tracking right now is the use of rapamycin. There's a trial going on right now in reversing the mTOR pathway, which is a pathway of cellular aging. Rapamycin is a drug. It's like metformin, but it's much more effective than metformin is in preventing aging on a cellular level. There's a trial going on in dogs right now that we should have results on in a couple of years. And depending on what that shows, I'm a big believer in potentially using rapamycin in preventing aging. Great.
Mm-hmm. Quick question. What is the name of the calcium CT scan?
Yeah, it's basically a calcium score. It's a CT scan to it's a cardiac calcium score using a CAT scanner. Yep. Got it. It's about $100. You can find it for $100. Don't pay more than $150 for it. You don't have to get a doctor's prescription. You can just call a radiology place, price it, and then just go get one done if you're over 40.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Are there risks for certain people regarding hyperbaric chambers? Is that something people should be concerned about, or are you pretty much thumbs up on that?
Okay, so absolutely. Like, not everyone needs to be in a hyperbaric chamber, okay? But pretty universally, it's very helpful for most people. The problem with hyperbaric chambers is when people start putting them in their homes and they start sleeping in them overnight and they overdose themselves on hyperbaric oxygen, which causes what's called reactive oxygen species, which are basically you overwhelm your antioxidant system of your body. So like every single thing in life, everything is dose dependent, right? There's a right dose of it. So what I'm saying is find a doctor that has a hyperbaric chamber, get a recommended dose for what you want to do, even if it's just longevity. There is a recommended dose for that, and follow that protocol.
Great.
Yep.
If you're intermittent fasting, but you need to take your supplements in the morning, how can you continue autophagy successfully?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, supplements do interrupt your fast, unfortunately. So you have to change when you take your supplements. I take my supplements when I break my fast, basically. It's a few hours late. There's not the whole science of supplementation and the timing of supplementation is still kind of up in the air. I do think that delaying your supplements a little bit to when you break your fast is perfectly fine. That's kind of what I do.
Got it. Okay. Do you have any tips for when you wake up too early? So regarding sleep, if someone wakes up too early, they want to go back to sleep, what are your thoughts there?
Go to bed earlier and just wake up early. Wake up when your biological clock wants you to wake up. Unless it's like one of these things where you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning because of stress. That's something different. That's insomnia. And that needs to be treated with things like cognitive behavioral therapy. And, there's excellent sleep doctors out there that can help you with that. But if you're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's when your circadian rhythm wants you to wake up. And actually, it's probably the best time for your brain to be active.
Great. Mm-hmm. What are the optimal cocktail of supplements for anti-aging besides NAD and resveratrol? And will you guys be administering in the future growth hormone, not peptides, but growth hormone?
Yeah. So lots of questions there. There's a lot of potential benefits to anti-aging supplements. I don't think resveratrol really has as much of an impact as it was sold to us many years ago, and it's kind of fallen off the radar. I do like NAD or NR supplementation. I do think NAD is much more effective when it's given IV versus via supplement. Metformin is also something you should look at and talk to your doctor about. I personally do take metformin myself. CoQ10 as well as another anti-aging supplement that I do like, but also simple things like vitamin D, even a multivitamin if you don't have full control of your intake and your vitamins that you're getting in your food, which none of us really have on a day-to-day basis, of course. Using a nice supplement protocol, but not overloading yourself with everything that's sold to you is the key.
Got it.
Oh, and growth hormone. No, we don't do growth hormone. I really just stay away from that because of its acceleration of age properties. Growth hormone can actually accelerate your aging. We do use peptides that give you some of the benefits of growth hormone without all of the full effects and potential negative effects. But I don't use growth hormones or peptides on myself personally.
Got it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like many doctors are paying attention to hormone levels. I'm a woman that has gone through menopause. I would like to know if this is being addressed in any meaningful ways.
You need to address it in a meaningful way for yourself. If your doctor's not addressing it, find a good hormone replacement therapist, a hormone replacement doctor, and they will put you on a protocol that will be very helpful. It's kind of like a real shame that doctors don't address it. And I think if you talk to any functional medicine doctor, I saw a question, how do you find a good doctor, right? There's lots of good doctors out there, and I don't want to bash doctors at all, but unfortunately, some of us are stuck in our old ways of stuff we learned 30 years ago, I think the best way to do this is there's a website called ifm.org, Institute of Functional Medicine.org, where you can find functional medicine doctors, which I think are a little bit more up to date on these things. But really just interviewing your doctor, show them the list of blood tests I recommended, see if they'll test them on you. And if they say no, then I don't know about that doctor, And if they're not into looking at hormones and things like that, might not be the right person for you at that moment.
Got it. Yep. Recommendations regarding ozone therapy. Once someone gets a full body MRI scan, talk about what the therapies are, red light, et cetera, post MRI scans, and what do you think of ozone therapy?
Right. Okay. So Full body MRI scan is just a diagnostic test. So basically, there's three pillars like I talked about. There's preventing an early death, and that's by, making sure you don't have cancer or an anatomical problem. MRI helps with that. And then there's all the health and wellness stuff I talked about on the wellness wheel, right? Diet, sleep, nutrition, all of that stuff. That's the most important, okay? Got to get that in order first. Then you have these longevity technologies, right? Which is ozone, infrared, heat sauna, cryotherapy. All of these things are great, but they're not great if you're smoking and you're laying around being a couch potato all day long, right? So really, those things work. They're helpful. Use them after you've got your normal health routine in order, and be proactive about diagnosing things with biomarkers and things like full body MRI if you can do that.
Got it.
Yep.
Dr. Shah, do you have any recommendations for books that dive into a lot of these tenets? I know there's a lot of them, but if you were to pick one or two books that you feel really dives in deeper, which ones would you recommend?
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. I think one of my slides on the nutrition aspect had a lot of the books that slide has my book list on it, basically. And those are not just diet books. Those books go over everything in health and wellness. I'm actually writing a book. I can't wait to have it out. It's going to be out mid next year. And Seth, maybe once it's out, I can give everyone a copy in your email list. We can shoot out an email to everybody. But yes, I definitely think that if you follow that list as a guideline, you're off to a good start.
Wonderful. What do you think of the future of exosomes for longevity?
Yeah. So I love exosomes. I do them myself. And I want to be clear. I said I don't use peptides. I do use peptides on myself. I just don't use the CJC 157, which is a growth hormone analog, yet. I probably will be in about 5 years when I feel like I might need it more. And I measure growth hormone levels to be on my patients before I prescribe it as well. But as far as exosomes and stem cells go, I think there's a lot of utility to them. We see a lot of just anecdotal benefits. There's no prospective randomized studies out that are with big enough cadres of patients right now that kind of prove the benefits, but there's definitely the science is there. And so I'm really watching it. I use them myself because everything has like a risk benefit, right? Like, is there a risk to it? Probably not. Is there a benefit? Potentially there is. And so for things like exosomes, I do use them on myself.
Yeah. Here's a question. Any ideas how we can be the CEO of our health when many of us are at the mercy of health insurance companies and we can't afford to do all these tests on our own? So what advice do you give to the mass population that maybe can't dive into all the great services that Next Health provides?
Yeah, you don't need all the services, all the expensive services to be very healthy and also to follow the KPIs of your health. And what I mean by that is that most of what it takes to be very healthy is just information, right? And you can get those informations by attending a talk like you did today and reading those books. And as far as following the biomarkers and KPIs of your health, the ones I gave you today are the cheapest lab tests that you can order, and insurance does cover them. The key is to get your doctor to order them for you, right? And if they're not ordering them, find another doctor. Just find someone that's just going to do it, right?
100%. Well, for fun, I would like everyone to put in the chat one takeaway, one learning that you gained today from Dr. Shah's presentation. Let's see our collective wisdom here just popping into the chat. Hopefully all of us got many different takeaways. And Dr. Shah, I just really want to thank you so much for sharing with our Mission Wealth community. Our health is the most important thing. And so here were some very tangible takeaways that we can apply in our life. And I also wanted to remind everyone that we will be sending out a survey, and we would love to get your feedback on this Inspired Talk. And also we love your ideas for future speakers. You'll see there's a QR code here. If you want to learn more about Next Health and get on their newsletter, feel free to check out their great organization. And also, if you're interested in Mission Wealth and would like to have the opportunity to have a conversation with one of our advisors to learn more about how we take a holistic lens when it comes to your life and your wealth, we'd be happy to have that conversation. And so there's an email posted in the chat. You can go to communications@missionwealth.com. And again, we will be sharing with you the takeaways from today's presentation and a link so you can watch this recording later. Dr. Shah covered a lot of information in a very quick amount of time. It was incredible. So thank you so much for joining us. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful and healthy holiday season. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.